river blowing bubbles, pretty bubbles in the air.
All right, guys, welcome to the West Ham Way. I'm here with Frankie. Frankie, how are you, mate?
Yeah, very well after last night, mate. We're safe for another year, and ultimately that's what we had to achieve when we come back after the break, and that's job done. So feeling a lot more relaxed than I did 4 or 5 weeks ago because it weren't looking good back then.
I was struggling on Thursday before Watford, and obviously now we've come out and got a great result against Watford, and then played really well yesterday against Man United. I know we didn't create too many chances, but we took them quite well. And I thought second half United just looked out of ideas and we just contained them. So yeah, mate.
But they started to get frustrated, didn't they? And Bruno Fernandes had his little bite at Mark Noble there, which if you move your head towards someone in the letter of the law now, you've got to go.
I was surprised he got away with it, to be honest, because obviously they gave. I mean, it was an obvious handball. Obviously, United at Old Trafford, you think they're going to get away with that? Didn't get away with it, and then Bruno's just put his head in on him. And it's like, well, and I think Masuaku actually got a yellow for getting involved.
Yeah.
So I was like, well, one rule for one and one rule for the other. But just happy. Great point for us. Obviously, I was a bit concerned beforehand because United with Martial, Rashford, Greenwood, they're so quick and so difficult. And even in that second half, you see the goal they took, that little interchange of pace and the finish, it's difficult for any team to deal with. So, yeah,
we normally struggle with that, don't we? We know that when people have got pacey players, that normally is, look what Adama Traore did to us when we played Wolves when we come back after the break. He sort of run for us for 20 minutes of him coming on. So that was always the worry. But defence have gone from leaky to looking fairly all right at the moment.
Mate, it's Angelo Ogbonna. That's the key factor there, isn't it? He comes back in, obviously absent from Tottenham and Wolves. And against Chelsea, he was superb, and he's kept that kind of form up. And I thought yesterday is exactly the same. I think I said in the video before that his ability to lead that defence, and I think his ability to look after Diop as well, because Diop's had a poor season, and he does get pulled out of position every now and then. So keeping him in check and keeping those fullbacks in check. And I think, in fairness to Creswell, I thought he did all right yesterday actually, and I think Creswell's one of those confidence players, isn't he? I think when he gets a run of form and he's sort of running the side, he feels a little bit more comfortable and he performs a bit better. So, yeah, you've got to say it's Angelo that's made that massive difference.
He has, and I've said it before, it's not just his performances that, the real positive that comes out of the way he's playing at the moment, but it's how much better he makes players around him. There couldn't be a better man to be standing alongside Ben Johnson at the moment. There's no one better to sort of stand in there and make sure he's in position and to sort of, command that back line, but also make sure he's looking over that boy's shoulder and making sure that he's got cover, that, he's organised, that he knows where he needs to be. And he'll find coming into a side, because to be fair, mate, he's coming out the blue. It wasn't like he was in and around the team and he was playing. And Gakia was in front of him and he was the regular player there. And all of a sudden, he's been dropped into that team. He's had to go to Old Trafford. He's seen at the deep end. Do you know what I mean? I know he played the game before as well, but it's sort of been dropped on him. And he's come in and done a superb job. But I think Ogbonna's a real positive and one of the reasons why he's looking so comfortable. And then, I think he also gives that midfield confidence. We're letting players get forward more than I can remember us in the last few years.
Yeah.
The fact that Souček's got that licence to run, and you even see Declan Rice picking up the ball now and driving forward, which we've never seen that from him before. But when you're leaking goals, it makes you a bit more reserved. You think, I don't want to go, because if I go, then, I know we're going to be vulnerable at the back. But I think everyone's feeling a little bit more confident. And, every time that final whistle goes, Declan Rice turns around to Ogbonna and he's the first man he goes over to. Because I think he's just making the whole team around him just feel and play so much better.
And I think as well, like, as good as Ogbonna is obviously vocally, Souček in there as well is that same type of player where it gives Declan that confidence to get forward. And I think that's what we've been missing, where West Ham previously, or particularly this season, we've been so reliant on certain players and we play to that. But when you balance it out a little bit and you give people license to play their game, we're a threat. And obviously, particularly since the Chelsea game, Moyes has clicked in terms of the formation, where we are getting numbers forward, we're putting pressure in the box, and we're getting the odd goal. And I think, like you've said, that's taking pressure off the full-backs and the centre-backs, who are constantly under pressure for the whole of the season. So, yeah, particularly yesterday, I thought was really impressed with the way that we were obviously compact when United come to attack us, but equally we weren't sitting back so much that we didn't look threatening. And obviously when United got their goal kicks, we were pushing so high on Maguire and Lindelof, knowing that they are a weak point for Manchester United, that they couldn't get into their rhythm. And United is one of those teams that they like to have a lot of the ball and they're very pedestrian with it. And I think West Ham just got it spot on yesterday and made it. I mean, we had 73% possession, I think, at one point at Old Trafford, which for us is unheard of. And we looked so comfortable. I thought Mark Noble as well. I've obviously given him a bit of stick, I think, in the past, and particularly in his number 10 role. But I thought Mark Noble looked quite good yesterday. I thought he kept the ball well, looked quite lively, and I think all of those factors make a massive difference. And I think as a team now we're gelling, and we've obviously got the ability. We shouldn't be anywhere near down the bottom half, but we are getting there, mate. We are getting there now.
I think Noble warmed into the game. I don't think he had the best start. There was that point where Declan Rice drove forward, went past about 2 or 3 players and really carried the ball well. Gave it to Noble. Noble turned straight around and gave it away. And Declan Rice was like, "Oh, what are you doing?" When someone makes that burst forward, it takes a lot of energy out of them. You want to see us at least hold on to the ball and then give yourself time. Last thing he wants to see is that ball given away, and he's got to get on his bike and get back and try and cover again because possession's been given away. So that's unusual for Mark Noble, because normally he don't give possession away cheaply like that. So I felt he grew into it in the end. But Souček seemed to have the reins on him a little bit more last night. He weren't. I mean, the games prior to that, he was virtually camped in the other team's penalty area for much of the game. That's why he was having so many chances. I've never seen one of our midfielders camped in the opposition box like that before. So do you think that was something Moyes had said to him, that we're playing a better opposition tonight and I need you to be a bit more disciplined and hold your position a bit more?
Of course, mate. I think particularly with that midfield, United have got so many players in there, and you've got Bruno Fernandes you're coming up against who can pick a pass from anywhere. And I think that front three of United, when they're in form and they're trying to sort of entice you to come out and make a mistake. And even when we conceded that goal, that the argument is that Diop maybe went too early and they got involved and then they found that space. United, in my opinion, are very, I wouldn't say easy to play against, but I think tactically you know what you're going to come up against. And I think, if you watch the Chelsea game on Sunday and against us, if you get those tactics right against them where you're really compact and when you go on the attack, you've got a bit of pace about you, they can't, Ole Gunnar Solskjaer's not clever enough to switch it up or he hasn't got a plan B. So, with Souček, I think he did a really good job in terms of keeping disciplined. And I think there will be games like that, these big games where teams can play the ball around and try and tear you apart a little bit. We've got to be compact. But, I think against obviously the teams we've got a bit of a chance against, the way to go is to get men in the box. And Souček's such a massive aerial threat. He's unbelievable, that goal against Watford as well.
He should be in the NBA, mate. The height that man jumps is unbelievable. I've never seen someone jump. But it's not even just that. It's like, he's tall, and there are a lot of tall players, but he's aggressive as well. When he went for that header on Friday, there was he wasn't thinking about who was taken out. He was just going for it. So, and I think West Ham fans like a player like that with a bit of grit and want to get involved and put a tackle in and get the odd goal. So, I think he's been obviously one of our best players since we've come back, and I'm happy to see him hopefully sign. I knocked him before when he first when we went into that break, and everyone was sort of raving about him throughout the. When football obviously wasn't being played, I wasn't 100% convinced on him. And the only reason for that was because if you watch him, if he's got a simple 5-yard pass, the amount of times he gives the ball away, he does it a lot. And there was that game where he scored in, he gave the ball away countless times. However, he's not a player who we want to be pulling the strings. He's not a Mark Noble, Wilshere, Lanzini. That's not what he's there to do. He's there to do the job that he does, which is box to box, get up and down, be that attacking threat, but get back and be solid when we need him. And I was looking at him in the wrong way. I was looking at him in the wrong light. The things that I was trying to pick out from him isn't what his game was, and it isn't what he could bring to West Ham. But I've been proved wrong on that, and he's been a massive part of why we've turned our form around. But I think one of the biggest things really isn't just individual performances. It's the fact that we almost seem to have got rid of all those journeymen who have come over and not prepared to try and weren't giving enough for the shirt. And in that first couple of games, when we come back and we had Wolves and, you know, we didn't seem to have any effort. We still had Anderson and Lanzini, and we was playing those players. They've been taken out, and I give Moyes his due, because I've never been a huge fan of Moyes, but he's always said, if you don't run, you don't play. And it almost as if he did believe in Lanzini, because last time he was with us, he was a big part of why we survived. But this time around, he's gone, you're not doing it, son. That's enough. You're not running. You're not committed. You're not putting it in the energy levels and effort that I need. So off you go. And he's done exactly the same with Anderson. It's not like he's gone, he's a 40+ million pound player, I have to play him. He has clearly seen that their work rate isn't there. And, you know, he's dropped them, I think, because of that reason. And now all of a sudden we've got a starting 11 of people all pulling together and playing for the shirt again. And that's why our results have turned around.
I think that's massive, man. I think it's a huge thing. You know, obviously, I don't know whether it's Pellegrini's style, but some of the players he's brought in, and, you know, are very obviously technically based, but they lack that grit and that bit of energy that West Ham have really been lacking for a while. And, you know, when we had that great season at the Boleyn, one of the things was we were so, you know, energetic, and we got forward, and there was passionate, and that was what carried us through that season. So, and there is obviously an affinity with West Ham fans and the players when they want to play for West Ham and sort of put a shift in, you know, and I think that's why people get so frustrated with someone like Anderson, who's got all the ability in the world, but has never either done it consistently or never really sort of shown up, you know, in the odd game and really sort of put a goal in, or he just goes missing. And I think, you know, not asking a lot for Anderson. I agree, in the Moyes side, you've got to be willing to support your fullback and help them when they need it and get forward equally when there's the chance. But Anderson's a luxury player that, unfortunately, I don't think we're able to really carry, particularly where we are as a club, and particularly with David Moyes, that it doesn't suit his style. You know, in fairness to Moyes, like you said, he gave Lanzini and Anderson all the chances in the world to get their form up and show, even after the restart. You know, he put Anderson in, you know, and we all said, well, he's not played well at all this season. And he went, all right, well, you know, I like him and whatever, and he could offer this. And he didn't. And then he's been out ever since. And I think that's really the way to go, you know, moving forward. I think having players that want to play, hungry players as well. It's not all about being a West Ham fan at heart, but it's about wanting to play for the club and push them on. So, yeah, 100%, mate. We've got to have a squad like that of, you know, of fighters, really.
And we've seen it over the years. Sometimes it's not even players that are that particularly great that we end up loving so much. Like, I remember John Pantil. John Pantil was a really poor player, but he ended up having his own lap of honour at the end of the season, and we used to sing his name because even though he weren't particularly a good footballer, he did give everything that he could, and you knew that he was trying. And so, you know, sometimes as West Ham fans, that's all we read. Well, Joe Cole said it in the BT Sport interview. He said, you know, these fans are not that hard to please. I think everyone gives West Ham fans quite a hard rap, really, for being people that over expect our teams to, you know, finish in Europe, and we want our teams to be beating the top teams and being successful. I actually don't think that's true. I think all we actually ask for as fans, and I think we know we're not no Champions League or European level side. I think we know what we are, and we always have done. But all we want you to show is you're 100% committed to that badge, and when you put that shirt on, you give everything you've got on the football pitch. And if you do that, we'll love you. And, you know, all of a sudden we've got players like Owen. Owen's just a breath of fresh air, mate, because all of a sudden we've got someone who just doesn't stop running. That boy runs himself into the ground. And luckily for us, he isn't just a runner. He has got a delivery as well. He's technically good, and he looks up and he tries to pick a man out of the cross. I can't remember the last time we had a player on the wing who actually looks up and picks out a man like he did with Souček the other day. What a ball did he deliver it? And, mate, give Souček all the credit in the world for how he attacked that ball. But, you know, it was put on a plate for him, really, mate. And we've not had a winger who can deliver a ball like that for, I mean, you can argue Snodgrass, but he's not been utilised in that way since he's been playing for us, because he ain't got the legs to get up and down the line anymore. So, but yes, it's really good to see that work rate and those energy levels are just, you know, where we expect it to be now, which is superb. And obviously there's the argument of how comes that's happened and why have we turned that around? It all seemed to happen when Declan Rice was made captain.
Yeah.
But how much has David Moyes, had a play in that?
I mean, it's an interesting one because people always obviously say David Moyes has obviously to some extent inspired some kind of comeback, but I don't think we can overlook someone like Kevin Nolan coming back into the club, because him and I think it's I can't remember his name, something Nevin, but he was an England
Paul
coach. Yeah. So both of them coming back, coming in, I think just give West Ham a bit of passion. And I think you've got to explain to people what it means to play for West Ham. And someone like Nolan, who was a brilliant captain for us over a couple of years, he's going to get them working. And I think there'll obviously be that element to it. I think when obviously Moyes come in, he wasn't allowed to bring in his own staff for a while, and that was always going to be an issue. I mean, you were going to get that Bournemouth game, everyone thought maybe we turned the corner straight away, and that bounce as soon as you get a new manager. But yeah, I think getting the right staff around him has helped. But I think one thing that Moyes has introduced is consistency, and we saw it a couple of times with Pellegrini, where he liked chopping and changing the side and seeing what he could do. And don't get me wrong, I think Moyes needs to do it more. I think there has to be a plan B, and I'd like to see subs used more frequently. But I think by giving the consistency and that team sort of buying into the way that he wants them to play, is giving them a chance to develop an identity and to get a momentum that we've lacked. And after there's a lot of criticism of the lockdown, but ultimately by playing these games in short succession and building on wins, I think the players are starting to understand what they need to do. So yeah, obviously Moyes has put that in place, but I think the players that are playing for us are working hard and they buy into it. So I think it's a bit of both, but you can never really tell unless you're obviously behind the scenes and see what goes on every day. So
how do you think that leaves us going into next season? We've obviously got a bit of a platform to build upon now. How do you see that panning out?
I've got to be honest, I think I would like to see us sort out the squad first. I think obviously Moyes has been in two separate spells now. I think he understands the club and he knows what he wants to do with it. I think it's about him getting the opportunity to bring in the players that he feels are right for West Ham and getting rid of some of the players that are holding us back. And it can't be understated how much money is on that bench. And yesterday we saw Allaire, Yarmolenko and Wilshere. You can't have players on that wage that he won't even bring on for 10 minutes. So clearly there's something wrong with them playing wise. So he has to get, in my opinion, complete control over who he wants to bring in. Now, he's done fantastic with Souček and Bowen, and I don't know the ins and outs. Was it a Moyes signing or did someone scout him? But let's just say it's Moyes. They've been brilliant, and and they've took to it like a duck to water. So let's put a bit of faith in him in that respect. But he's got to turn it around in terms of that squad. And I think one criticism is it's all right doing it over this short period of time with a bit of momentum, but they are going to get tired over a season if we play the same players week in, week out. He's got to have players that he's happy. And I think that's the problem. I think if he had players he trusted, he would bring them in and bring them in at half time or whenever. But I don't believe he trusts a Lanzini in a really important game anymore. And if you don't trust those players, they need to go. And it's as simple as that. So he's got to have complete control over it, and he's got to get it done early. I don't want to see none of this, let's leave it to the last week or 2 weeks and drag it out. And I know it's something historically that we tend to do. But get him in early, get him in with the squad, bed him in, and we can hit the ground running and use the momentum we've got now.
Yeah, that's probably my biggest worry going into next season. Because of the way the climate's going to be and clubs are going to be struggling for money and so on, does that mean that we're going to really try and play those games that we play but go even worse with it? Because there are going to be teams who are desperate for the money just to keep their books balanced, and they're going to need money. So if you've got someone coming in and putting in a low bid, which we love a low bid, normally it gets laughed off. And or sometimes clubs, we've actually upset clubs before with the way we've behaved in transfers, and that's not worked for us in the past. This time round, maybe because of the financial situation, Sullivan's sort of ridiculous tactics to lowball teams and to try and get a bargain might actually pay off for once. I don't know, but in the same token, it could be even worse because he might be thinking in the same way and think, right, I can really go and put in a low offer here, and I've got more chance than ever of them accepting, because they might be desperate for the funds, which could end up seeing us play that game and not actually getting the people we want and not getting them over the line early enough. And then how many times do we see people signing so late in the window? And I want to see him go on the pre-season with us. I want to see him playing in all those friendly games and getting used to the squad and the players around him. There's no point in them coming in, the day of the season starting or a couple of weeks into the season. You want them in nice and early for a change. So I hope we see that. I'm not so sure we will see that, but that's, I think, and like you said, you've got to back David Moyes, but obviously the 0% transfer budget, sort of one out, one in, is also a little bit of a concern, because we've got positions that we've been desperate to have personnel come into for the past few years, and we ain't brought the right people in. So that left back position, as much as Cresswell did do okay against Manchester United, I think that's a position we've been crying out for someone for a long time.
I completely agree. There are glaring holes in terms of the squad and every fan can see them. It's that we've really been the fullbacks. Obviously, Ben Johnson coming yesterday done fantastic, and hopefully he'll grow into that role and really take it as his own. But there's been concerns over that. Obviously, it's nice that we finally addressed the midfield issue a little bit with Souček. But I always look back at the Pellegrini. I think it might have been the start of the last transfer window or in the summer, where he got rid of. I think Arnautovic left, Carroll left, Hernandez left, and Perez left, all on massive wages. And they brought Haller in as this star signing. But I remember saying, it's like you've got one key striker in there, and you've got Antonio, who's a makeshift striker, and it's that that has got to be sorted. I don't think West Ham fans are going to say we want £30 million strikers, but I would like 4 key strikers that we're going to use throughout the season in cups. Midweek games, things like that he trusts. And I think the right back thing's crazy. I can't remember us making an investment, like an actual transfer fee into a right back since they've taken over. And they think, they're like on the never, we'll just get a free in or we'll just get a loan in and we'll tide it over. But I don't think it's that difficult. I know that the negotiation and getting hold of these players might be, but in terms of what we need, I think it's very straightforward. It's about going out there now and being decisive about it. If we want these championship players, I've just seen Nottingham Forest drop out of the playoffs yesterday. Matty Cash, is he going to want another season in the championship? We need a right back, as good as Ben Johnson is. Why don't we bring him in? And why don't we do it quickly and not haggle with it and wait and all this kind of thing? I think if you're going to give David Moyes the best chance of succeeding next season, you've got to give him the most time with these new players, and you've got to give him the full squad depth. Because as bad as I think our business has been, I actually think when Pellegrini first came in, he got it right when he had almost 2 in every position. But then the second transfer window, they took it all away from him. So you've got to give him a chance to build and have that. And I think that's so pivotal to us doing well if we're going to do well next season.
I think that's a really strong point you made there. And the reason why I think we are so inconsistent with putting the right personnel we need in places in each window is because we're always chopping changing with management recent years. No one's really been able to have a season or half a season like Moyes has had now, go into next season knowing the positions that he thinks are weak and bringing in players to fit that. And then as they go along, they can really start to build a team and plan for the future and bring in right players into which positions they want and just really have a vision for the. I think Wolves have done that brilliantly. I think they've really planned, highlighted each position. Who do we want? Where are our weaknesses? How do we strengthen that? And I don't know. I can't remember where I heard that story, whether it's true or not. But I heard that they have 4 people lined up for every position in their squad at any one time. So their scouting system, they know that if their right wing is sold, they know their second option, third option, and fourth option. At all times, they have 4 people for each position lined up that they would want to go and approach if they either got a long-term injury or a player was sold or whatever it is. What a brilliant way to run a football club. That you're that organised. You know that the second it happens, they know where they go and look and go and sort that out. And you mentioned, obviously, Haller. That weren't our first choice. And that was the whole point. Right. He was like probably 4th choice, really. And the players that they wanted, they were never able to get. And I just, you don't want to go into that window again and end up being your fourth choice, paying through the nose for them, and because things are getting late and you've got to make a signing, and then you go and rush it. And I think if we knew the style of football we was going to play, we would never have signed Sebastian Haller, because you would know that he don't play as a lone striker and doesn't work as a lone striker. So we definitely need to be more organised, more planned, and the only way you get that is if you've got a long-term vision with a manager in charge who, can build a team.
I think it's such an interesting point, like the recruitment, because I think it's been well publicised that we lack that scouting network in the same level as other teams. Obviously, Wolves is one you've mentioned, but you've got people like Brentford in the Championship who consistently bring in good players and sell them on for profits. And I think particularly under David Gold and David Sullivan, they've had this sort of, let's bring in players that have got no resale value. And you're never going to build West Ham aren't a club that have massive riches. We can't go and buy these massive players. We have to build continually. And as much as I hate Tottenham, when they sold Gareth Bale and over that period of time, they consistently brought those players in and built a squad that eventually could compete. And I think we lack that structure to do that. And I think that's why it's so frustrating for us, because we want an identity and we want to see that players that are being brought in really fit in with a system. Now, I think as a club, you go two ways. I think Burnley with Sean Dyche, he has control over everything, transfers, everything he wants to do. They just give him the key. And there are other clubs like Watford where they change that manager all the time, but they have the networks and the whole structure in place for someone to come in and manage it. So, pick which one ultimately, but it just seems like West Ham never have an idea. They give Pellegrini and Husilios 100 million to spend, but with no long-term vision. Now you've spent 100 million on players. Now you're going, well, we can't afford anything. I'm like, that comes ultimately down to your incompetence, because there are so many examples that you could put in place. You would be able to make money on players. You would be able to progress the club forward. And that's what always gets me about the owners. It isn't just the money, because ultimately you could say they spent it. It's the incompetency. And I think that's what David Moyes, unfortunately, is up against. Now, fair play to him. He's brought Souček and Bowen in, and those are two massive signings for us. I hope that he has got a good track record and he has got a good eye for a player that he wants, and we can build. I don't think it's perfect. I'd like West Ham to be really solid in structurally and go, we know who we want, we know how we want to play, we identify it, maybe a director of football that's there for 4 or 5 years. But unfortunately, I think at this point in time, we just have to hope for a bit of stability. And he's the guy that could potentially bring the players in that gets us playing. And I don't, we've said this before, I don't think it's about being the best club in the world, but I think it's about putting on a performance and trying your best and really giving it. And I think if we have a squad of players that are willing to do that, that's massive for us to see week in, week out.
Absolutely. And I think you were spot on when you said, you can't afford to have Wilshere, Anderson and Haller on the bench as West Ham United Football Club. That's too much in wages and too much in value for players that ain't even coming on the substitutes anymore, because one, either they don't want to play for the club or Moyes don't trust them. But whatever that is, it's quite clear to me that if you're not going to be playing them and you have got a 0% transfer budget and you need to sell to bring players in, then those are the players who ultimately need to leave. And I'll put Lanzini in that bracket as well. But obviously with the current climate, and money's going to be a bit more difficult and values are going to drop. And then also now that the players that we've brought in as big marquee signings now are out of form and can't even get on the pitch as a substitute. Haller and Anderson cost us £80 million collectively. How much are you going to get back from now? And do you think Sullivan, if someone turned around to you tomorrow and said, I'm going to give you 20 million for Anderson, I'm going to give you 20 million for Sebastian Haller, would you sell them, and do you think Sullivan would sell them?
Well, I wouldn't sell him. I mean, I'd be a bit on the fence with Anderson, because I do believe it's getting to that level where it's cut your loss type situation. I think Haller is difficult because we all know he's a good player and he has scored some great goals this season. I don't think anyone's denying that, but I'd give him another season and I'd keep hold of him. And I think ultimately we don't have enough strikers. So he's one of those ones that you would just keep in. But in terms of kind of, what would we do going forward? I can't even remember the question, mate, to be honest.
Yeah. So because obviously we know we need to sell players to bring players in. So say David Moyes goes and says, I want Eze and I want Benrahma or whoever it is that he wants, or he's picked up Watkins, or they're the players he wants.
Yeah.
If you've got to really cut your losses with two big players to bring those players in, is that something you would do? And do you think Sullivan will be bold enough to say, I'm happy to take a £40 million loss just to get rid of those players and give Moyes some cash to bring some players in?
So the one thing I always go back to with Sullivan, the only player of value that we sold in recent years is Payet. And Payet was the best player in Europe by a mile at some point. You know, he was up there with, you know, your Messi's in terms of assists, and we all knew how good he was. And he should have really have waited till the summer or sold him for nearly 50 mil. And obviously he's got an attitude problem. I understand he wanted to leave. But what he did was he sold him for 25 million, which I think is disgusting given his value. So he will take a cut if he can get a bit of money in. He then went on and brought Snodgrass in. Now most people went, oh, that's not the replacement, he'll do it. And he never got round to replacing Payet. So he's happy to sell players if he believes that it's going to pad his wallet out. And obviously, I think the rumours are that we are a bit skint at the moment, and that's the situation. So that I think it's less. I would be less concerned with those players, Allaire and Anderson, because I think they're on the fence in terms of sales, and you could argue that they would be sold. And I think because these championship players won't be as much, you can bring in good players. It's the people like Declan Rice that would concern me, where if someone is willing to pay £80 million upwards for him, which I believe is what we could command for him, I can't see David Sullivan saying no. As much as they give, he's going to be here for God knows how many years. If someone pays nearly £100 million in this market for him, he will go if they want him to go. And I think that's something that is going to undermine the whole stability of the team. It's all right if you can sell your fringe players and bring someone else in. It's when he starts getting to the real key assets. And I'm interested to see what their mettle is on that, because I think they got a bit of an out with Payet and said, well, he didn't want to play for West Ham anymore. But what happens in a situation where, you know, Declan Rice could go for God knows how much, and then they go, do we need to pay for the stadium? We need to pay for this. We need to pay for that. Pay for all of it. And I just don't trust them to reinvest it. I really don't. I think, yeah, they'll do it as kind of penance and say, well, I gave you a bit. But we've seen it before. Like I said, with Snodgrass, there's about £15 million that's gone missing, and we've never seen it, you know, since. So I don't know. I don't trust them with that. I think that is a real worry for everyone.
Is that your price tag you'd put on that Moyes head, 100 million?
I think easily, mate. I got to be honest. I'm a bit of a Declan Rice fanboy, and it isn't just because he plays for West Ham and he's obviously come through our academy. But every time I see him over the past 3 years, he improves consistently. He had I remember he come in and did very well under Bilic, and then he had a bit of a shocker, I think, away to Liverpool with Pellegrini. And he took him out of the team for a couple of games or whatever. And the way he come back and he just improved. And, you know, I think this season was, can he become a centre midfielder? You know, how many centre-backs have you seen convert to that position? But now we're seeing it. His passing's good. His forward passing's brilliant, which he didn't have in his game before. He's scoring goals. He's an intelligent football player. And when you watch people like Manchester City or Liverpool, he fits in any of those teams. And I know they won't say that because they love their De Bruyne's and Hendersons, but I'm telling you now, he fits in any of those. He walks into those teams because he's too good, and he's only going to get better. It's as simple as that.
Yeah, and that's, like, don't get me wrong. I think the last thing we need is for him to go next season. I think while we've found that little bit of form, anything could quickly unbalance that side back to us really struggling again. And I think losing Declan Rice is as bad as has been Roberto in goal when we lost Fabianski. I mean, I just think it would completely ruin the team to a point where I think we'd be really, really struggling again. So, and he's not replaceable. You can't go and replace him with a championship player. Who are you going to replace him with? That boy is just, if you're going to replace him, you'd have to spend all of that money you get for it, because that's the level of player that he is. And mate, he will go on to do. Jordan Henderson's been and had a massive career with Liverpool. He's gone and won everything domestically with them. But I'm telling you now, Declan Rice will be a better player than Jordan Henderson, and you know, he will go to that very, very top level. He is incredible, and I do genuinely believe, because of how intelligent he is and how confident he is to organise players around him, I think he will be a future England captain. I think the writing's on the wall there. So it's just typical us that every time we've had a talent from our academy, we've never ever got good money for him. I don't get how teams can sell players like Maguire for £80 million. And we go and sell players like Jermaine Defoe for £6, or we go and sell players like, and we sold Rio for 15, and then he's gone for 30 like the following year. Like, it's just crazy. We always get done over with money wise with the talents that we bring through, and now all of a sudden we've got this financial difficulty with the economy and everything else. And you can end up seeing him end up going for like £60 million or so, whether that's this year, next year, whatever. You just know that. Whereas in normal times, if you go back, wind back a year and put him in the form he's in now, a year ago, he's worth 120, 130 million. But why do we never get that money? We just never do we? So it's frustrating.
Yeah, mate. Unfortunately, it's being a West Ham fan. I don't think we've ever really had any luck with any of them, and we've had such a great history of amazing young players. And unfortunately, it seems like we've got one of the worst owners to have around with one of the best players we've had. So it'll be interesting to see how they play it. I think the only thing that might bode well is he's that good that he's almost irreplaceable. And I think even the owners understand that if you take him out of the team, it's like taking 2-3 out of the team, because he covers so many different positions, his interceptions, his awareness. He can play both positions. He's almost irreplaceable. And I say that to my mates. They say, "Oh yeah, Declan Rice this, Declan Rice that." I'm gonna say, "But I wouldn't take that money, because you will never get a player in world football in that position that will come to West Ham that will be able to replace him." And that's the issue we've got. If I could say we'll bring in Ben Rama, Matty Cash, Easy, all these players, and they'll perfect, or someone directly to replace him, I go, yeah, fantastic. That would make sense, because we feel like Declan will probably leave eventually. It's just a case of when. But I just look at it and go, who do you bring in? Who? And I think as well with our midfield, Noble had a decent game yesterday, but he's sort of cracking on, and it's like you don't want to leave that midfield where there's no one coming through, and you've got to build it again. And I think particularly with Rice and Souček, they've got a nice little understanding now where Declan's been able to move forward a little bit and equally sit back when he needs to. And I think obviously that adds a lot to our game. So, Declan is irreplaceable at this point. And I don't know whether I trust them to have that system in place to kind of support it really going forward.
I'm with you. We wouldn't go and find a £40 million replacement who can come in and do the job. Maybe not to the level of himself, but do the job to the level that we'd need, and then also go and buy yourself Easy, and also go and buy yourself Matty Cash, and really strengthen the whole overall squad off the back of that sale. I just don't think that would happen. It would be, can we get someone in for 20 million? Hopefully they'll work out. They might not, and then the rest of the money, like you say, would you wouldn't see it again, and that's obviously a big concern, because the perfect excuse is there. We haven't got the money. We need the money. It's a brilliant excuse to be able to cash in assets. So I still think he'll be here next year. I really do think that after the end of the season that we've had, I think he's enjoyed his football at the end of the season as well. He's getting forward now and scoring, like you said, he scored that brilliant goal. I really think he will just. I think he's enjoyed his football so much at the end of this year. He would like to give us one more season just to see if he can do something with West Ham. I think he'd love to leave on a high. I don't think he'd like to leave just surviving. I don't think he'd like to do that. And that's one thing about going into next year. A lot of people's opinion is, we just want to be stable and safe and just have a solid year next year, and we don't need to go and do anything special. But I'd love us to just try and go and have a bit of a cut run next year, and just go and try and do something. And I think Declan Rice would give, if you was to sit him down at the end of this season and say, right, next year we want that trophy. We want to go and try and make something happen. And we're going to bring in a couple of personnel, and we're going to really try and go for something. Mate, I think he'd be right up for that. And if he could walk away from West Ham bringing you a bit of success, I think he'd love it. Because as much as we know he probably isn't West Ham till the end of his career, I do think he loves the club. And I just think he would love to go out on a bit of a high and, handing you over something, whether it be a final or a trophy or, getting into Europe, whatever it may be. I think he'd love to leave on that note rather than we just survived.
Yeah, you can tell he's got a real affinity with the club. I know it's not his, the club he supports, but he respects it. He understands what it means. That's really important. And I think kind of looking at him even next season, maybe to have him as the captain when he starts and Noble was the club captain, because I think that's another thing that you could say to him and sit him down with and saying, we want you at this age to take on that responsibility. And what we've seen when he got given the captain's armband, he can lead and they respect him even at 21. So we're in a very unique situation with a player that not only has the ability, not only has the consistency, but he's got the right attitude. And that's everything that we need and what you need from a captain. So I do think Declan will give us another season, irrespective of if someone comes in, because I think he knows as well that a move is always there. And yeah, of course, don't get me wrong. I think if West Ham built and all of a sudden we were, a top 10, top 7 side, I think he would stay. I think he genuinely would if we kept building and got better. I think he would look at it. But I'd like him to give us another season and sort of if we could get even a League Cup. I know it gets sort of ridiculed a little bit, but a bit of silverware for us and something to kind of go away with and show we're progressing is really important. But I think Declan will know that. I think he'll know that by the transfer window, and that's why I say getting the players in early is a real statement of intent. And I think he needs to know that we're not playing around in terms of getting people in. And I also think as well the fact he gets on with David Moyes clearly is a massive incentive. And we don't know how well he got on with Pellegrini or anything like that, but he clearly respects Moyes. And they've got a good relationship, and I think that counts for a lot, particularly with managers, if you can trust them and that they're going to give you the time. And he's young, and he wants to play for England, and I think there's no better place for him to do that, especially with our fans, and particularly with the sort of, I think he's played every single minute of this season, which is an unbelievable stat. So he's in a perfect place to just keep building and progressing. And I think when you add people like Dean Garner next season, if we can keep hold of him and he wants to stay, he's going to be excited by that. He obviously was in the academy with him, so it's another sort of carrot, isn't it? You just want him to hang around and really sort of give it his all, really, for one last season if he can, and we'll see what happens.
Absolutely. So do you see Moyes as the man to take West Ham forward over the next 5 years? I think we all know he's going to be in next season now. He's obviously been out there and looking at scouting at games and so on. So I think it's clear, and he's got every right to take that into next year. I think he's been brought in and we've asked him to do a job twice, and I think last time it was harsh on him, but I think it was the right decision to try and make a change.
I agree.
However, this time you can't bring someone in and ask him to do a job like that. He does it both times for you and then say goodbye again. I think that would be really, really harsh. So I think we know he's going into next season, but is he the man for the next 5 years, or do you think it's going to be he's going to have another season? It will be average, and then if we've got that bit of stability and he brings that bit of stability, we're going to need to make a change to try and take us to the next level, I suppose.
I think one thing that's happened since you've moved to London Stadium is obviously our expectations of where we thought we were going to be versus where we are has massively changed, and I think we've had to adjust to that, unfortunately, and it's taken time. But I almost think by them sort of forcing David Moyes at us, we have realised where we are as a club and where we're at. And I do think, obviously, you've said he's got to be given another chance in terms of having a season behind him. I do think he'll be able to get the best out of the players that he's got. But there are concerns in terms of his management style, the lateness of the substitution sometimes, the lack of the plan B. I think there are too many factors at this point that would determine whether he would be a man for the long term. And I think problems with someone like David Moyes is it's always going to be give him a year and then maybe give him another year if he does right, because we were promised, a world-class stadium, world-class manager and all this type of thing. And, the board have to take some responsibility for that. And they do have to understand that. And I think West Ham fans have been through the mill a little bit, obviously, for the past couple of years. And I think they would respect a bit of stability, a run in the cup. Can you imagine a semi-final, FA Cup day at Wembley? That would be great, I think, for the fans, for next season. But as we all know, when you get these stable managers, we've seen it before, your Tony Pulis's, your Mark Hughes, they'll get you somewhere and then they'll never take you to that next level. And I think if West Ham fans understand that, because I think that's what we've got to respect. I don't think he's not the man to take it to Europe, but he's the man to to take over the reins for a bit, maybe bed in a couple of youngsters that he's shown that he's willing to do. And I think that's a massive part of being a West Ham manager, by giving youth a chance. So I wouldn't say for 5 years. 5 years is a hefty job for someone to have. But I think short term, as much as it pains me to say, because I'm a bit anti-Moyes, particularly at the beginning, I would just take him for another year and let's just see how he gets on. But what I wouldn't do is go and give him a 3-year deal after, because then what you're giving him license to, if he gets in a dodgy run of form, we're stuck with him, that type of thing. And the owners do have a reluctance to really sack managers. And I think with Pellegrini, they did it too late as well, to be honest. It just went on, and Bilic went on and on. So, yeah, I don't know, mate. I would take him for a year and then we'll see how it lies. But so much is going to change in a year, I think, in terms of playing squad and stuff like that.
Yeah, it's an interesting one. And I'm with you. But they have said, though, that they're waiting for him to see how he gets on in the start of next season before they put a formal contract. So, but while that's a positive, because they're not going to go and throw a contract at him now, because obviously he's made us safe. But that is saying you get off to a good start, and there will be, that deal is not going to be a year. That deal is going to be a 3-year deal, and that is a little bit of a worry, like you say, because then it does drag on. And the thing with David Moyes, I think he is such a nice man. I mean, those things that he was doing with the fruit deliveries throughout the COVID situations and all that. What he was doing, I don't know, but he clearly is a really, really nice man. And everyone that you talk to has that opinion of him. What a lovely man, what a nice man he is. That's great, but we want a leader. But I would, and I know 5 years is a long time, but I'd love to see us go and bring someone in that we have the confidence that they are going to be here for the next 5 years, that they are going to build a team for that period of time. And I'm not sure, while everyone is saying yes, give Moyes next season, let him have a full season to see what he's made of, let him bring in his own personnel and his own players. I get it. I do get it. But I don't think that, if we're looking for a leader, someone who's going to try and bring our football club a bit of success, and let's have it right, mate. Mark Noble, he put up his 500th game for West Ham, which is a massive, massive achievement. He's been at our football club for a long, long time. And if you look back at his highlights and you look back at his career, there's nothing that you can really pick out other than some playoff finals that you can say, what an achievement. So we're West Ham. We're a big club. We've got a big fan base. And we deserve that in a 15-year time frame, we deserve to at least go and try and do something. I know we had a cup final in that time, and that was obviously probably one of the biggest moments while he was in and around the West Ham team. But we deserve more of that. And I'm just not sure David Moyes is the man that's going to bring it to us. Should we keep him on next season? Yes. Just I do hope they don't throw a massive contract at him, and then we end up just accepting mediocrity for the next three years, because we've all seen that life can throw anything at you, and I've been a West Ham fan for 30 odd years now. I'd like to see some success in my lifetime, and you start to believe that it's never going to happen. So I just really hope that one time we're bold enough to go and try and achieve something as a football club. And mate, I've always said we're a sleeping giant. We are a sleeping giant. That fan base, when we have our day, it's incredible. The fans that turn up and where we're just all over. Wherever you go, anywhere in the world, there's West Ham. And I just think we need someone who recognises just how big we are and match our ambitions as fans, and give us something back for all of the commitment that we've given the club over the last few decades, really. So I do think Moyes is the man to take us into next year, but I do hope the club is looking at a longer term future and maybe trying to line up someone who is someone that we've got the confidence in to take West Ham to the next level.
I think I can tell you're a bit resigned to it. That Moyes is obviously going to be there, and it's a bit hard because clearly you want someone else, and I'm exactly the same. But what's interesting with the owners, particularly since they've been in, is have you seen that a player will have a good run of games and all of a sudden it's gone, mate, have a 4-year deal, and you'll be thinking, well, hang on a minute, that's it's 4-5 games. Lanzini, for example, a perfect example. When his contract was running out and he wanted more money, rightly or wrongly, he did well for about 2 months, got it. and all of a sudden, I don't really fancy it no more, that type of thing. And you're stuck with these players where it's like they don't want to be here. And I suppose to some extent it is like the manager, isn't it? Where, you know, that's what I'm saying about structures and football clubs. If you had a director of football that knew what the fans wanted, understood, and he said, right, we're going to build it. It's going to take time. You know, I hate this example, but Liverpool's a good example. They brought Klopp in, and he knew the project, you know, was to obviously win the Premier League again and all this kind of stuff. And it took time, and they built it, and you know, they had bad players and they got rid of them, but it was a process. You know, that's the right type of commitment. But when you commit to something that you know full well isn't there to last, you're constantly in a state of flux where it's like we can't build anything or understand. That's why West Ham fans get so frustrated, because, you know, even with like someone like Pellegrini, it's like I personally think he probably would have kept us up, to be honest, when Fabianski came and all this stuff. But there's never like, what does Pellegrini want to achieve? What's he trying to get in place here? What are we trying to do? And then they just sack him, and then we go, well, what are we doing now? And you see with the playing squad now, we've got Bilic players in there, you've got like Pellegrini players, Moyes players in there, and it's such a mishmash. Whereas Liverpool, they're all Klopp's players now. He's got what he wanted, and apart from a few, they've moulded into his style of play. I just want us to have that consistency, but I want us to really have faith in the people we're putting in charge. And it's really frustrating. And I'd love to have like a Klopp-esque manager that's young, and we brought in, like, I know Kovac has just gone to Monaco. And he proved it with Frankfurt with a smaller team and a smaller budget, and turned them into a great side. And I think that's the issue, isn't it? The board aren't ambitious enough, in my opinion, when it comes to signings. Carlo Ancelotti is one of the biggest examples of this. Now, they would pay, I think Pellegrini was like the third best paid manager in the league. Now, I don't believe that they couldn't just take that wage and give it to Ancelotti. And Ancelotti's arguably a better manager, done it at a higher level, with more clubs, experience in the Premier League. It's like, it's obvious. It's almost obvious. And they don't want to, they would go, no, just put Moyes in. It's all disjointed, and it's all done on, you know, it's all done on money. And that's what the issue is. And even when it isn't, it's just not well spent. So I sound a bit negative here. I do hope Moyes comes out and plays well.
You know what? I really do get it. And do you know what it is, mate? It's lazy decision making. And that's what frightens me so much about this whole Championship sort of transfer policy that we're going to have. Let's go and find, you know, good players from the Championship who can make that step up. And mate, while the principle of that I love, what you can't do is just go and sign the players that there's a buzz around. Because what you end up doing is you end up paying for a Championship player a real serious amount of money. If you want to go and sign your Eze's, your Matty Cashes, your Ben Ramas, your Watkins, you are going to pay tens of millions of pounds for those players, because there's already a buzz around them. They're already on everyone's radar, and that's what they are. If you want to take that policy, go and sign one of those, but also go and find and highlight and scout a gem from down there that's under the radar, that not everyone's looking at, that you can go and pick up for under 10 million and turn them into an asset for your football club in the future. When they went and got Pellegrini, it was such a lazy appointment. Yeah. He was semi-retired in China. And mate, I was never up for that. When everyone was saying this is the next level managerial, you know, signing that West Ham have made, I didn't believe it for 1 second. He was semi-retired in China. Do you know what Pellegrini actually achieved at Manchester City? Losing the league to Leicester. That's what he achieved. Yeah. He didn't. All right, he won the league with them, but he inherited that squad. Anyone could have done that. Go and give someone those players and put a manager in there. I say anyone. That's probably a little bit, you know, unrealistic. But
I know
what
I mean. Yeah.
It's not a hard job that he had. Whereas, and again, he was probably a really nice man. The Man City fans loved him and used to call him the charming man and everything else. He was probably a top man. But he'd never proven that he could. And even when he'd had that success that he'd had in Spain, he inherited that team as well, and he took them into Europe, but they'd already been in the Intertoto Cup the year before, so it wasn't like he'd taken a team from nothing, turned them round, and all of a sudden there was success. So he'd never really done anything like that for me, that gave me the confidence he would come into a club like West Ham and, you know, make us this huge success. So it's all a bit lazy. I think the Pellegrini appointment was lazy. I think our transfer policies are lazy. I think the players we sign are lazy, i.e. the Haller and the Anderson. It's just bringing players for the sake of bringing in players. There's no fault. There's no depth to it. There's no, that style is going to perfectly fit the way that we want to play next season. It's just bringing in people for the sake of bringing them in. So, no, we need to improve that from top to bottom. We need to improve. And while it's nice to see Ngakia, and now it's nice to see Ben Johnson coming through, there hasn't been enough of that of late either. And just the whole way through, we need to see more people progressing and getting into that first team. We need to see the whole, vision and ambition, and we need a plan. And I think that's what West Ham have lacked for a long time now, is we want to go on a journey. This is our goal. Now, what do we need to get there? And that's what I have not seen for such a long time. And the clubs that are doing that, your Leicesters, your Wolves, they are showing that it's possible to achieve big things without being your Man Cities, the top six. So I don't think there's any reason why West Ham United Football Club can't go and achieve what Wolverhampton Wanderers have achieved. And there's absolutely no reason. But what we've got to do is we've got to put those foundations in place like they have for that to be possible.
But I agree. This is one of the things that gets on my nerves so much. This is why I think, particularly with the owners, they are really incompetent, because if you understood anything about football or you looked into any other models, you'd realise that your Leicesters and Wolves, they're not spending loads of money. Leicester are a perfect example. They took the money from Maguire and they reinvested it. They brought a young English player in that they knew had huge resale value, and then they sold him for an absolute profit. Chilwell will probably be the same case for them, where they sell him to Chelsea for 60, 70 mil. It isn't difficult. That's why I find it so frustrating, because it's like you've got the blueprint there. At least try and I think I saw somewhere, I don't know if this is true or not, but that the players that we sign are all with very similar agents. So we don't have like a real understanding of who we want to get, how they fit in with the club, their attitude, nothing like that. It's like, oh yeah, my mate has got this player, do you want him? And I think that's so dangerous. This isn't like the 1980s or 1990s or whatever, where you can just throw players together and sort of go, oh, that might be all right, or whatever. Football's so technical now at such a high level. They've got scouts all over the world with profiles and this, that, and the other. And I think, unfortunately, we're sort of at the expense of an owner that hasn't moved forward with how we've seen football. I don't know what he did at Birmingham or how he did, but the game's moved on hugely in a short space of time, and particularly in the Premier League where there's so much money now. And it's irritating. It's irritating that West Ham fans don't ask for a lot, and this is what we said earlier. It's about putting a graft in and players that fit within the club and the identity. And that's why people like Antonio so much, because he's not the most gifted player, but he gives it every single week, and it's so nice for us to see a player like that now show his goals and potentially get player of the month and all this stuff, because he deserves it. But yeah, I think it's obviously top down, and that's why it's such almost like a poison chalice, really. Whoever takes it over, you've got to give them either full reign or you just have a structure. You can't play between the two and think it's not Championship. It's not like Football Manager, and that's the issue. It really isn't. It's not like that at all. So yeah, it's so irritating.
So what do you think next season, mate? What's your prediction? What are we going to go and do? Are we going to have another season like this one, or we're going to be mid-table?
There's something in me that's going to say, like, I think we do all right for 2-3 months, and then it all goes to pot, and then we start losing, and then we don't pick up enough points, and we're down that sort of end of the table, and we're in the same position that we were in with Pellegrini, and we're like, come on, we don't want to be in this constant situation. So I am really concerned, and I think the Championship players that we could bring in, it's like you said, it's all right having a buzz around you, but we don't know. Players don't always transition to the Premier League. Recently, Bowen's done it. He's probably done it one of the best of all of them. Maddison's a perfect example for Leicester, done it absolutely brilliantly. There's a couple of players that have come up that have done all right. We don't know, and it's such a risky transfer strategy. If you start saying, oh, I think a player can deal with this or deal with that, and whose opinion is it to make that decision? Do you see what I mean? What's the value of that opinion? If it's David Sullivan saying, well, I reckon Easy would probably be quite good, then we've got no hope, because he doesn't understand football. So that's why I say it's so crucial for us to get this period right. I think if we get the transfers in and the signings in, I think we could finish probably mid-table. You're looking at probably 10th to 12th, which I think is terrible, because I'd like us to be ambitious, and you would hope that you would go for it in the cups. But I'm concerned that if he gets either too many players in, or there's too high a turnover and they're not the right players, we might not recover from that type of full early doors, and it'd be such a shame if we brought these really good young players in and they had a couple of bad results, and all of a sudden it's difficult for them to find their form again. And I just think, it is really risky. I think that's the issue with Moyes. It is really risky. The whole transfer strategy, the manager, everything's risky. But I suppose they would look at it like, well, he's only on for a year, so that's a low cost for us. And I think that's so. They don't look at risk the same way. We look at risk as we want to play Premier League football. They look at it like, well, if we have to sack him, we'll sack him for a small amount, not a Pellegrini size amount. So I don't know, mate. That's a long-winded answer, but
Nice.
I hope we do okay. Just stabilise at least for a season, and then we can reassess.
And mate, I think you're absolutely right. If you're going to sign Championship players who are young, inexperienced, if you get yourself into a battle, trying to get yourself out of a difficult position, there is no guarantee that they're going to have the character and mindset to get you out of those difficult games. Brentford last night had a chance of going up automatically, and went and got themselves beat by Barnsley. I know they've had a brilliant record at home, and they have been absolutely superb. But that's what I'm saying. The crunch games, if you're relying on youngsters to get you through those crunch games, it's a big, big risk. And while if we end up in and not having the best season next season again, if we have got a load of youngsters around us who aren't experienced and haven't been through that sort of scenario before, it could be really difficult. So hopefully we won't be in that position, mate, and we'll kick on, and hopefully we go and beat Villa, and then we've got a really positive start to next season. We go into it, and mate, the most important thing for I think all of us right now, regardless of what's happening, who's on the touchline and everything else, is just that we can all go back and watch football again, mate, because I'm missing it as I'm sure you are.
Yeah, mate. Proper struggling with that. It's a problem for us. So I think one thing just to kind of say to finish it off is, I don't think anyone wants David Moyes to fail. I don't think it's one of those things where we want him to just get sacked early doors. We genuinely want him to do well, but it's such a massive risk, and I don't think there is really a right answer to whether he stays on or not. It's just can he get the results, and can he do the business really? And listen, I don't want to be anywhere near that relegation zone next season, because I think we've been through it too much now. I think it's got to that level where it's like, even when we spent the money, we weren't even near Europe. Do you see what I mean? And it's like, let's just push up the table, bit of consistency, and then fingers crossed we can get back and see West Ham playing some decent stuff again.